You will likely have heard of Marco Polo's voyage to the Khanate in the 13th century. What historians seldom mention is that Roman envoys made a similar voyage 1100 years earlier. Some of this likely due to the fact Marco Polo detailed his accounts personally, whereas those of the Roman envoys were lost to the ever-shifting sands of time. Or were they? The year is 165, and under the rule of Rome's co-emperors Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius, the mighty flame that was the Pax Romana nears the end of its once long and stable wick. Rome's latest victory against the Parthian Empire once more extends its borders to the Persian Gulf, if only briefly. It has long been the dream of Marcus Aurelius to send envoys to Selica, the land of silk in the Far East. Silk, ever popular in Rome, passed through multiple hands on its long journey from Selica, being manufactured, then sold and purchased multiple times before finding its way into the hands of eager Roman consumers. Other goods were popular in Rome, but silk and its origins, they were a curiosity that would creep into Marcus's mind during moments of quiet meditation. With Parthia now displaced as Middle Empire in the trade route, a more direct and lucrative path would be possible. Against the backdrop of the opening to the Gulf, an envoy is being assembled. Your name is Vincentius Regulus, and you are a descendant of a merchant who grew his garum business to the lands of the Spaniards and beyond. Garum has made your family rich beyond anything your ancestor could have imagined. While family stories speak of him as a legionary who forged his own destiny, yours was handed to you, literally, from father to son multiple times before landing in your clean silk lap. Unlike your ancestor, your hands have not seen more than a few hours honest, hard work. Social networking is your strength, and the means to achieve agreements and accords always in your favor. Some call you arrogant, spoiled. Others say you have a stick up your arse. Still others call you a fool for your seemingly blind obsession to all things business. Your take, decidedly different. For on your shoulders rest the needs and wants of a family and business, a family requiring your due diligence and frequent attention, as is the case with your brother, whose expenses you are reviewing now with your accountant. Your fears have become reality. Your brother's love for gambling has clearly made the crossing from harmless vice to imminent danger. It appears his gambling has nearly bankrupted your Egyptian operations. During this review, a messenger arrives at your villa. He comes from the imperial court with word that your presence is required. You'd seen the emperor on exactly a handful of occasions, and all were at a distance. Such a summons had only two possibilities, both of which extended beyond mere curiosity. Either doom or reward, and you certainly could not muster a reason for reward. The clouds of doom, on the other hand, they hung low with the discovery of your brother's debauchery in Egyptus. There was also the greed and jealousy of fellow merchants. None of this made you feel easy on the half-day journey to Rome. The trip through the countryside in your Carpentum was a blur as you were fixated on the possible reasons for the summons. Perhaps some dark family secret buried for generations had been unearthed by a competitor. These thoughts only left your stomach in tighter knots. Twice you asked your coachman to stop so you could heave the contents of your rushed meal onto the countryside. What didn't help were the noises and smells of Rome itself once you entered. You'd always desired to distance yourself from this chaos back to your villa estate. Every trip in and out of the city was calculated with as much care as you paid to your ledgers to get you in and out as quickly as possible. Today, it seemed, there were even more poor, rabble around than during your last occasion here, all lending their filth and noise to the once and future glory of Rome. On the busy streets to the Palatine Hill, your eyes glance down the alleys of the numerous busy residential quarters. Homeless Romans from all regions of the empire strewn through these alleys, like alley cats waiting for their next cura annone. This was the public grain and bread provided to its hundreds of thousands of male citizens. And as a merchant, you knew the origins of this program were originally an emergency measure which, over the centuries, had transitioned into an important strategy. Part of a two-stage strategy to help pacify and maintain civil obedience among the now just over 1 million inhabitants of this ancient city. The second stage of this strategy, well, that was the part you were now passing, the Flavian Amphitheater. Here, over 50,000 Romans would gather to watch everything from famous battle reenactments to the most visceral of blood sports, one-on-one or one-on-many gladiatorial combats and or public executions. Soon you were taken inside the Flavian palace of the co-emperors. And despite your predicament and possible reasons for being here, you didn't fail to notice the sudden opulence and splendor around you. It wasn't even a slow transition from the filth and squalor you'd passed through earlier. It was immediate and stark. A statement by those with their fingers on the pulse of power to show the rest of Rome what true opulence looked like. You were led through a massive garden courtyard with a magnificent oval fountain at its center. The archways and buildings surrounding the courtyard numbered in their hundreds, each more ornate than the next. The servants and slaves here reeking more of perfumes than of the body odor and excrement of the lower quarters. You're led into a series of magnificent halls, at the end of the last of which you see the emperor, Marcus Aurelius, huddled over what appear to be maps. He notices you and eagerly motions you to join him. Vincentius, come. You are one of our most celebrated merchants. Tell me, do you know what lies beyond here? You look at the map showing the Mediterranean and his finger sweeping beyond Egyptus to the eastern lands beyond. The land of the Parthians? You reply, yes, indeed. Do you know Rome again extends here to their sea? And tell me, Vincentius, do you know what lies beyond this sea? Suddenly you understood the reason for you being here. The trade of goods, that had to be it. Perhaps a lucrative contract to distribute goods back into the empire, with a monopoly on the goods coming in from the east. The emperor continued, beyond the lands of Indus, and far beyond that, lie the lands of Selica. This is where I need your expertise. My contacts have told me there isn't a contract you haven't bent to your will. You also command one of the largest non-military trade distribution networks. I need someone with that superior skill to negotiate trade on our behalf as part of an envoy I'm assembling. There, he stated, with an emphatic tap on the empty part of the table, far from the boundaries of the actual map. Dread filled you immediately and fully. Thoughts racing through your head. Not one Roman alive has ever been to Selica, and precious few Roman merchants to the lands of the Indians. What of your business? Your brother? The emperor once again continued. The land route is a journey that would take years for a return trip, but a well-traveled merchant from Parthia, he tells us that the sea trade routes would be quicker, and with the right navigator, namely him, much more likely to succeed. In addition, a much greater quantity of goods could be transported via ship there and back. And don't worry, you have a few days to sort your business interests out. I will personally appoint the best available men to work with your family and ensure there are no interruptions to your business. The next week would be a whirlwind of activity. You questioned your negotiating ability so highly vaunted by the emperor, as here you were, on your Carpentum, headed to Portus, and the ship that would take you to Egyptus. The emperor certainly had a way with words, and coupled with his station, left you without much real choice. Two of your uncles would tend to the business, with the assistance provided by the emperor. These uncles already assisted you as they had your father, and they were trustworthy. Unlike your brother, who you were beginning to express great doubts over. In Egyptus, you would bring him along with you, the one item you were able to bargain in your favor. There was no way in Tartarus you would leave your brother to bankrupt the entire operations. You would keep him by your side in plain view, where any harm he could do was within arm's reach. The 10-day trip to Egyptus was uneventful. You'd made the trip numerous times, but for those who hadn't, the lighthouse at the mouth of the Alexandrian harbor would have appeared magnificent. Built 400 years ago, it still shone as a bright beacon with its fire at night, and as bright, white-polished sandstone during the day. The plan would be simple. You would find your brother and leave for Ctesiphon immediately to meet up with the rest of the envoy. Upon arrival at your garum distribution center, you would find these plans dashed, however. Your brother was nowhere to be found, which meant he could only be in one place: the debauched dens of ill repute that littered the northwestern section of the waterfront district. 3 hours of searching later, you found your brother in one such establishment, drunk almost to unconsciousness, and surrounded by girls of all ages and shapes. "Lucius, you blasted, utter, vile sloth," you yelled. Barely conscious, he looked at you with his right eye squinting and left lazy eye wandering in the other direction, with a half-smile forming as he recognized you. "Brother," he slurred, clearly still intoxicated. You had your attendants grab him despite his ongoing protests. You would explain his predicament to him in the morning during the sail to Syria, Palestina, for he would absorb precious little in his current state. The next morning, your brother responded in anger at what he called his apprehension and subsequent kidnapping. Naturally prone to seasickness during the sea travel didn't help as he retched between periodic bursts of anger. You also caught him imbibing from vials of poppy milk. You threw these into the sea and locked him to his quarters for the remainder of the trip to Tyre. From Tyre, you would take the Strata Diocletiana to the Euphrates, and from there to Ctesiphon. You were curious about the other envoys, knowing very little, only who your main contact was. You would spend the greater part of 2 years with these individuals, which was immensely more tolerable than the thought of your brother on this trip for the same duration. However, it was better to have him near you than wreaking additional havoc in your long absence. Still, something about this voyage ushered in your darker understanding of the fates. Exactly what wasn't clear to you yet, but things felt ominous. And yet, with a push from your emperor, here you were heading into that unknown. What adventures would await you?